Kobe Bryant's era that he ushered in, right? He is the preps to pros basketball player who was not a big guy, right? Before Kobe Bryant comes along and jumps straight to the NBA from high school, who did you have? You had Moses Malone, whom Meghan thinks I'm old enough to have seen play in high school, but not quite, maybe as a youngster. Kevin Garnett, and here comes 6'6" Kobe Bryant, and the first person kind of at that size to skip college and to make it work. And we're recording on a Monday morning. Tomorrow is the first anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death in a helicopter crash alongside his daughter Gianna and 7 other people. Meghan McPeak, a year after Kobe Bryant's untimely death, what do you still think his lasting impact is on basketball and on the sports world?
I think the one that stands out the most is, you know, we saw what he did on the floor and the legacy he created. And essentially, when you look at the game of basketball, in my opinion, he was the bridge between the Michael Jordan era and then the LeBron era. And he was the one that played in both and played against both. And when you look at what he did on the floor, we know all the accolades. That is standalone Hall of Fame career in itself. But his second Hall of Fame career was what he did off the floor after the negativity that we saw with what happened in Colorado. You cannot fault him for that. That is reality. And he did everything he could to try and reinvent his legacy off the floor. And I think his daughters were the biggest part of that, specifically Gianna, and what he was doing with trying to be the utmost and best girl dad he could be. You know, we now know he had 4 daughters, and the legacy he leaves behind is what he was trying to do for Gianna and the game of women's basketball. He was one of, if not the biggest cheerleader of women's basketball and the WNBA. And we saw that with, you know, him going to multiple NCAA games, taking his daughter, multiple WNBA games, not just games with the LA Sparks, but as well too, we saw him going to all-star weekends, taking Gianna and having those bonding moments as father and daughter, and not pushing her to play the game that he loved, but embracing the fact she wanted to play the game. She wanted to be Kobe Bryant 2.0. And, you know, the one interview that sticks out to me the most is the one he had, I believe it was Jimmy Kimmel, and it's a video that has gone viral since his passing. And it was when he was telling the story of, you know, fans and multiple people telling him, you've got to have a boy, you've got to have a boy. They've got to carry on the Kobe Bryant, you know, legacy and the Mamba mentality. And he remembers the moment because Gianna was with him and she said, no, I got this. I got the legacy. I'm going to carry the torch. And typically that's what we see with, you know, male sports, male athletes, is the father carries the name. The son carries on the family name, But Gianna was going to change the game and carry on the family legacy and be Gianna Bryant and carry that legacy not only off the floor, but as well on the floor. And I thought it was a touching moment after their passing when UConn dedicated a jersey to her and a chair that day and essentially officially recruited her. And then the WNBA doing what they did with drafting her and one of the other girls as well too, to the 2020 season, which was dedicated to Black women who have fallen at the hands of police brutality. So his legacy, I think, is going to be bigger off the floor and what he was trying to do with a second career after playing, but his Hall of Fame career stands on its own and stands by itself.
But Dave Zirin, a year after Kobe Bryant's passing, what do you still remember most about him?
Well, I keep thinking about this quote from Sports Illustrated 25, 30 years ago, where they were comparing and contrasting Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. And they said Magic Johnson plays because someday he really wants to work. In other words, he wants to get out in the business world, build his brand, build his fortune. And they said Michael Jordan works, meaning playing basketball, because he wants to play. And that after he retires, he wants to play golf and chill. So 2 different mentalities. Are you working because you want to play, or are you playing because you want to work? And Kobe played because he wanted to work. And when I think about the outpouring of grief that took place, I think one of the reasons why people were crying is because it was so clear that Kobe Bryant was not going to be somebody who was old in his 40s. He
Mm.
was not going to be somebody who was, trying to make a living on the edge of the game, who was, just showing up to sit courtside, who was playing golf all day, who was doing, and for people who want to do that and have the money to do it, more power to you. But that just wasn't going to be Kobe. Kobe was going to blaze a new trail in his 40s, 50s, and 60s. He already had won his Oscar, for his love note to basketball. He was setting up his production company. He was setting up to build and actually blaze a new kind of trail for athletes. And you see this now all the time with so many athletes, from LeBron, of course, but also athletes like Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, who are talking about being, content creators after they play the game, who are going to take what they learned being in the public cultural eye of basketball and turn it into movies, turn it into TV shows, turn it into using their creative genius in a whole other field. And it really did look like that Kobe Bryant was going to be, the John Henry of that process, the person who blazed the trail, did the work, and made it incredibly easier for the athletes who were to come to be those kinds of content creators. And so with Kobe's death, people were mourning the person he was, but people were also mourning the person he was going to be. And I think that that's one of the things that hurt people so deeply.